There is a man you urgently need to know about today. Most of the mainstream coverage this week has not even mentioned him by name, and I think that is a profound mistake, because understanding who this man is, why he was appointed, and exactly what he said on Iranian state television yesterday tells you more about the next 6 days of this war than anything that happened in the diplomatic negotiating rooms in Islamabad or Tehran. His name is Mohsen Rezaei. He is 69 years old. And for 16 years, from 1981 to 1997, he commanded Iran's Revolutionary Guards. During that tenure, he oversaw the grinding Iran-Iraq war, the rapid development of Iran's ballistic missile program, and the fundamental transformation of the IRGC from a revolutionary militia into the most powerful military force in the Middle East. He ran for president of Iran 4 times, and he lost every single time. But his electoral record is not the point. The point is that when Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the man America killed on February 28th, chose someone to be his personal military advisor in March, he chose Mohsen Rezaei. And yesterday, sitting in his military uniform on Iranian state television, Mohsen Rezaei looked into the camera and said this: "Mr. Trump wants to become the police of the Strait of Hormuz. Is this really your job? Is this the job of a powerful army like the US? These ships of yours will be sunk by our first missiles. They can definitely be exposed to our missiles, and we can destroy them." And then he added something else, something that I think deserves the exact same amount of global attention as the threat about sinking ships, but which has barely been reported. He said, and I quote, "I am not in favor of extending the ceasefire at all." He explicitly framed this as a personal view, not in favor of extending the ceasefire at all. That sentence came from the man who is now the personal military advisor to Iran's supreme leader. It was spoken publicly on state television with exactly 6 days left before the ceasefire expires on April 22nd. It was spoken while Pakistan's army chief is actively in Tehran trying to arrange a second round of peace talks. And it was spoken while the White House confidently says it feels good about the prospects for a deal. That single sentence is what I want to spend our time thinking through very carefully. Because here is what I think most of the media coverage is missing. The question is not whether Mohsen Rezaei personally wants the ceasefire to end. The real question is why Mojtaba Khamenei appointed him. And when you look at that question carefully, the answer is not simple, and the geopolitical implications of it are absolutely terrifying. Let me first give you the full picture of who Mojtaba Khamenei is and exactly how he became the supreme leader. Because this is context that most people outside Iran simply do not have. And without it, the true significance of the Rezaei appointment is impossible to understand. On February 28th, 2026, the day the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was assassinated in the opening wave of strikes. He was 85 years old, and he had been supreme leader since 1989. His sudden death created an immediate constitutional crisis because Iran's system requires the Assembly of Experts to legally select the next supreme leader. But the Assembly of Experts was in no position to meet openly. Their offices had been bombed in early March, and the members were legitimately afraid for their lives. What happened next, according to multiple credible reports, including Iran International, is that the IRGC moved very quickly. IRGC commanders put immense pressure on Assembly of Experts members with what was described as repeated contacts and severe psychological and political pressure, aggressively pushing them to vote for Mojtaba Khamenei as the next supreme leader. The vote happened online under chaotic wartime conditions, with security concerns completely preventing in-person meetings. And on March 9th, just 11 days after his father was killed, Mojtaba Khamenei was announced as Iran's new supreme leader. Now, here is what you need to understand about Mojtaba Khamenei. He is an absolute unknown quantity. He is not a man who who has spent decades building a public record of political positions and diplomatic decisions that Western analysts can easily read and interpret. He is 56 years old. He has operated almost entirely in the deep shadows of the IRGC's intelligence apparatus. He is widely believed by experts to be much closer to the hardline faction of the IRGC than his father ever was in his final years. And crucially, he came to power under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. His father murdered, his country under total military assault, and the most powerful military in the world bombing Iranian cities. The question of what Mojtaba Khamenei actually believes, what he actually wants, and what kind of supreme leader he intends to be, is a question that nobody outside a very small circle in Tehran can answer with any confidence. That includes the American intelligence community, it includes the exhausted negotiators sitting across the table in Islamabad, and it includes the White House, which on Wednesday said it feels good about prospects for a deal without being able to logically explain why. And then there is the ultimate question of who is actually in charge. Because here is something that the coverage almost never addresses directly. Even if Mojtaba Khamenei personally wants a deal, and Axios notably reported that it was his personal approval, communicated through panicked runners passing notes because he feared for his life, that made the April ceasefire possible. The question is whether he possesses the actual political strength to override the hardline IRGC factions that put him in power. In Iran's system, the supreme leader theoretically has ultimate authority. But that authority is sustained by political coalitions, by institutional relationships, and by the loyalty of the IRGC commanders who physically control the missiles, the drones, and the fast attack boats in the Gulf. Mojtaba Khamenei owes his position to those specific commanders. And those commanders, represented most visibly right now by Mohsen Rezaei, are explicitly not interested in a ceasefire extension. Now, let me tell you about Rezaei specifically, because I think his appointment tells you something incredibly important about the internal politics of Iran right now that is being completely overlooked. Mohsen Rezaei is described by every single analyst who covers Iran as a hardliner. And crucially, he is described as a hardliner even within the Revolutionary Guards. That specific phrase matters enormously. The Revolutionary Guards are themselves the hardline faction of Iranian politics. They are the institution that controls Iran's missiles, its drones, its intelligence services, and its proxy networks across the region. They are the institution that shut down the Strait of Hormuz on day one of this war. They are the institution that shot down an American F-15E fighter jet over Iranian territory on April 3rd. Within that institution, within that already extreme organization, Rezaei is considered to be further to the right than most. He is the man who, when asked on television yesterday about the prospect of an American ground invasion of Iran, said it would actually be great because Iran would take thousands of American hostages and then demand $1 billion for each one. This is definitively not a man speaking the language of diplomatic negotiation. This is not a man speaking the language of compromise or ceasefire extension or productive second rounds of talks in Islamabad. This is a man who commanded the Revolutionary Guards for 16 years during some of the most brutal fighting in the history of the Middle East, and who has never publicly wavered from the absolute position that Iran should not back down under foreign pressure. Not in 1988, not in 2003, not in 2015, when the nuclear deal was signed, he fiercely opposed it. And not now, in April 2026, when the Supreme Leader's advisor chair was offered to him, and he accepted it. And he was appointed as the personal military advisor to the new Supreme Leader in March, while the ceasefire negotiations were already actively underway. While Pakistan was already shuttling messages between Washington and Tehran, while the entire diplomatic architecture was being built around the assumption that Iran wanted a deal. Why would Mojtaba Khamenei appoint this specific man at this exact moment? I want to give you three possible explanations. And understanding all three is a matter of global security, because the correct explanation determines exactly what happens on April 22nd. The first explanation is that Mojtaba is himself ideologically closer to Rezaei's radical position than to his own foreign minister's position. The appointment reflects his genuine preference for continued military confrontation over a negotiated settlement that requires giving up nuclear enrichment. If this is true, the talks in Pakistan are purely a delay tactic. Iran is intentionally using the ceasefire window to rebuild its military capacity. We have satellite imagery confirming this. And the appointment of Rezaei is a loud signal to the IRGC and the Iranian people that the new supreme leader is not going to surrender to American demands. In this scenario, April 22nd is the day the war violently resumes. The second explanation is that Mojtaba is genuinely trying to find a deal, but he desperately needs political cover from the hardline IRGC to make concessions without being accused of betrayal. By appointing Rezaei the ultimate hardliner, the man who commanded the guards for 16 years as his military advisor, Mojtaba is actively buying himself credibility with the military establishment. He is saying, look, I have the toughest man in the room advising me. I am not weak. I am not surrendering. And then he uses that political cover to go to the negotiating table and make concessions that would be politically impossible without it. In this scenario, Rezaei's public opposition to the ceasefire extension is not actually Mojtaba's position. It is merely Rezaei's personal view, as Rezaei himself claimed, and that distinction matters enormously. The third explanation is the most uncomfortable one. It is that Mojtaba Khamenei does not yet have full control over Iran's decision-making apparatus, and the Rezaei appointment reflects not a strategic choice by a leader, but a political constraint imposed on a puppet. This implies that the IRGC commanders who violently put Mojtaba in power retain absolute influence over his decisions. It means that Rezaei's presence at the supreme leader's side is less about Mojtaba choosing Rezaei and much more about Rezaei being forcibly placed there by the IRGC to ensure the inexperienced supreme leader does not dare make concessions the military establishment does not want. In this scenario, Rezaei is not an advisor, he is a minder. And the personal view he expressed on television is not personal at all. It is a calculated warning from the institution that truly controls Iran's military. Now let me tell you why America has not officially commented on any of this, because that silence is just as significant as Rezaei's televised threat. The White House on Wednesday reiterated that it feels good about prospects for a deal. The State Department has issued absolutely no formal response to Rezaei's explicit threat to sink American ships. CENTCOM has made no statement about the Supreme Leader's military advisor opposing the ceasefire extension. The official American posture is stubbornly optimistic that Pakistan is making progress and that a second round of talks is likely before April 22nd. Why is that the public posture when the Supreme Leader's advisor is threatening American warships? First, officially responding to Rezaei instantly gives his radical position significantly more diplomatic weight than America wants to give it. Second, America is in the middle of an incredibly delicate diplomatic moment with Pakistan's army chief shuttling messages, and a public fight would inject massive noise into that channel. Third, and most importantly, America may genuinely not know how much weight to give Rezaei's statement. Is he speaking for Mojtaba Khamenei or against him? Until America has better intelligence, the safest play is to say nothing and keep diplomatic channels open. But that silence comes with a devastating cost. Every day that Rezaei remains the Supreme Leader's military advisor and America says absolutely nothing about his threats is a day his radical position gains implicit validation inside Iran. When America stays completely silent after Rezaei threatens its naval fleet, that silence is interpreted by the IRGC not as diplomatic caution, but as undeniable confirmation of American weakness. It feeds the exact confidence ladder Iran has been relentlessly climbing. Let us not forget the stark difference 6 weeks can make. Mojtaba initially approved the ceasefire while living in terror of assassination, communicating via runners. 6 weeks later, he is established. The immediate fear is gone. Iran has spent 2 weeks digging out its missile cities, receiving Chinese surface-to-air missiles, and resupplying through dark fleet oil sales. Now, the man counseling the supreme leader publicly demands a return to war. The terrified man who approved the ceasefire in secrecy is being advised of the radical man who wants to end it 6 days from now. One of them will determine what happens.